Hi, I welcome you all to this event and to Star Library. I'm Nan Jackson. I do the programming for the library. And we are so thrilled and especially graced to have Bill here tonight. I had heard through the grapevine that he had worked for CBS News. I had worked for NBC News. And so we started this, when we met, we started this competitive, which was better.
I won.
And he so kindly agreed to do this. I am a firm believer, having been on the ground for news, that it's the people on the ground that really see the truth. And I think Bill will attest to that and will enlighten you tonight about his experiences in Central America. Judith Garton has been a steady person in this witness to history for us. Her ability to, an interest in trying to find out about people's lives has helped make these programs in-depth and interesting, and we thank her for doing it. She's a teacher and a counselor in psychological and metaphysical disciplines, and just has a real interest in life and people. So I will turn it over to her, and she will get Bill to talk.
Or not. Okay, welcome everybody. So Bill, why don't we start at the beginning so that you can give us a sense of your background, childhood, what formed you into being a journalist? I'll poke you when we go to the next one.
Primeramente les quiero dar las gracias a todos ustedes. You said this, I didn't know this was in English, doesn't it? You don't? Oh, okay. I can do that. Okay, so talk a little louder. I won't need this thing. All right, so my name is Bill Nieves. Nieves is Spanish for snows, which is an odd surname for somebody whose parents are from Puerto Rico, since there's no snow in Puerto Rico. I was born in Manhattan. I was raised in the South Bronx. And because I was raised in the South Bronx, when I was there, it wasn't as bad as what people think they know it as now. When I was growing up there, it was comprised of Eastern Europeans and Italians and Irish and Puerto Ricans and African Americans. All of us. But as the years went by, it became a very dangerous place with heroin, glue sniffers. I mean, I kid, but I'm not kidding. A summertime recreation for me would have been staring out my tenement window across the street at a rooftop and watching glue sniffers rolling off and landing on the sidewalk. So my parents kept me away from the window. And they also kept me away from the streets. So my parents always stressed education and religion. So I wasn't really allowed to play outside. So I watched a lot of television with Mom, black and white television. Everything from Liberace to Joan Crawford, film noirs. And comic books. And oddly enough, it was comic books and television that taught me how to speak English and gave me a love for reading. So I'm kind of self-taught, Yeah, we're teaching Mom, bam, Zoom. But it gave me a thirst for knowledge. It also created my worldview. My worldview is composed of comic books and television. And what are those things? They're little comic books are little story panels of life, of observations of life, right? There's stories, and so my worldview is very visual and oral. So, of course, we moved from the South Bronx, and to make a very long story short, I went to film school. I went to USC Film School in Los Angeles because I took a film class in college, and I said, "This is for me. I understand this language. It's speaking to me." And so I majored in cinema, and I got out of USC in 1973. in a recession hit the United States, there was not a job to be had. I couldn't get a job in Hollywood or television. Much worse, I was a typical New York City kid. I didn't know how to drive. Imagine, I didn't know how to drive. It's like not driving here. LA's worse. People drive 30 miles for a loaf of bread. You think nothing of it, and I didn't know how to drive. So right after college, my first job was as a carnival barker on the Santa Monica Pier. And my game was, I don't know if you're familiar with it, they probably have it at the county fair. It's the 3 rings for a quarter, and you toss it, and if you get it over the mouth of a Coke bottle, you get a stuffed animal. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, except it was not an hourly wage. It was, if you spent 15 hours in that booth in the summer, and it was a cool, clammy day, nobody came, and you made $10, you got 15% of that $10. Wow. So for 15 hours, you got $1.50. So this was not getting me any closer to my trajectory of being Orson Welles or Alfred Hitchcock. So, but there was no work to be had. So I wound up working in the Eastern Sierras, living at 10,000 feet. Not bad for a kid from South Bronx, First time I fell in love with the wilderness, and I found out what John Muir was. And I ran into bears at night thinking they were dogs. I grew up fast. So, but I worked up there because I thought, at the ski resort, because they promised me, we're going to get public access here, and then you'll run it. Well, that never happened. So then I went to the San Francisco Bay Area, looking for work around there. I didn't have any luck. I wound up living in Berkeley, California, sleeping in a sleeping bag, on the floor, foam pad, making onion soup in Berkeley, which sounds lofty, but all it is you fry 12 pounds of onions without letting them burn. And then you add some gook and water, and that's it. And then I would wash dishes in San Francisco in the financial district. I learned early on that if you're going to be poor, you're going to be working for minimum wage, you work in a restaurant because you get a meal per shift.
Sure.
If you work in a factory, now you have to buy your food. Work in a restaurant, you get a meal and whatever you can filch. A slice of, not a lot, okay, slice of cheese, a ham. I had a lot of linty cheese and ham because I snuck it out of my pocket. So that wasn't, so in looking for work in San Francisco, I made some cashier laugh, and she said, have you ever tried stand-up comedy? And no, stand-up comedy, people like, my heroes were Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Bob Newhart and Carol Burnett, Moms Mabley, on and on and on. I said, no, I never thought of that. Well, San Francisco has 3 clubs. Now, this is at a time, this is 74, where comedy, now you go to a shopping mall and there's a comedy club and everybody has an open mic. There were 2 comedy clubs in San Francisco, the Improv and some other place. New York had Catch a Rising Star and the Improv. And that was it. In San Francisco, I had coffee galleries that were trying to do it, and they would pass the hat, or a couple of bars and that I lit up. She said, at a couple of places, they give you 3 free beers if you do 5 minutes of stand-up. I said, whoa, 3 beers, we're not poor. Now remember, when I left USC, since I wasn't living at home, I had ballooned to 215 pounds. And then, by the time now that I'm in Berkeley, and I don't know anyone in Berkeley. I went there because it was a college campus and I knew how to live and survive around a college campus. But when I went to Berkeley, when I lived at Berkeley, I got down to 135 pounds. I was on food stamps. And I never figured this out. They would sell me $43 worth of food stamps, $46 worth of food stamps for $12, right? I'm hungry for $12. $46 for the month. And so I would sell $15 worth of food stamps for $10 in cash, because with food stamps you can't buy beer, but with $10 you can. So, so the guy gets $15 worth of food stamps, he's okay, I know, it's a scam, arrest me. And I would get time, but there would be 1 beer a day. I would have to make that 1 beer per day. And that you leave 1 day without a beer, right? 'Cause a 6-pack. So anyway, I took her up on that challenge, and I did stand-up, but that takes me somewhere else. So I did stand-up comedy, and that was not getting me to my trajectory. And I was hungry, and I came home to Mom and Dad to get something to eat. While I was in New York, I said, let me try to get a job in media here, I'm gonna give this a shot. At least you don't have to drive in New York, you take the bus or walk or take the subway. So I told my father, he said, well, you know what, I think I know somebody at work who works at this radio station. Let me give him a call. And so again, I said, oh, yeah, call this guy up. I called this guy up, and he says, no, you don't have anything here. There's a recession. Recession. All right. But why don't you call this guy at this advertising agency? Young and Rubicam, a huge international advertising agency. And they have a Spanish division. Give the guy a call. And he's like, you know, I borrowed my father's clothes, 135, and it's like I'm swimming in his clothes. In his rayon acetate clothing. But anyway, I abhor it. That's why it's all cotton, sir. So I go to this advertising agency. No, there's nothing here. Why don't you go to this Spanish TV network with the improbable name of SIN, Spanish International Network, which is stupid for two reasons. In English, it spells sin. And in Spanish, sin means without. So in either case, it's why. I'll tell you why later. So I go to sin, and long story short, the president of the network hires me that day. He says, you start July 7th, Monday, at Channel 41 in Paterson, New Jersey. Wow, I didn't expect that. So it's July 7th, it's Monday. I go to work, and they say, hey, kid, do you know how to direct? And I figured, well, you know, they're talking about Alfred Hitchcock and roll action. I said, well, yeah, I went to film school. I can direct Super 8 movies. No, can you direct the TV live? No, it's the first time I've ever been to a TV station. Well, kid, you're going to direct the 11 o'clock news Friday. So you've got 4 nights to learn how to direct the 11 o'clock news live. New York. Right? Okay, so I did that, and then a month later, the president of the network calls. Hey kid, he always called me kid. Hey kid, opening a new station in San Francisco. I want you out there. I don't want. I love what I'm doing. I'm directing live television. No, you're out there. You're on the day after tomorrow. You're booked. You're gone. So I go back to the Bay Area, which is not too weird, right? Because remember, I was in Berkeley making onion soup. I came out to get something to eat in the Bronx. Now I'm working television. Now I'm in San Francisco working television for real at a brand new TV station. I hadn't even signed on the air yet. Who gets a chance to do that? So, and it was a non-union station. It's a poor station, shoestring budget, not even shoestrings. We couldn't afford the shoestrings. So like, you know, huaraches, which are Mexican sandals budget. So, out there, and it was wonderful because we had the run of the house. You know, the average age was 30. You could do anything you want. The station signed on the air at 6, signed off at midnight. From midnight to 6, you could do anything you wanted. You could take the gear and do anything you wanted, edit anything you wanted, and put it on the air if you wanted. It's our station, okay? But unfortunately, the station was a UHF station. It was channel 60. And nobody could get it on the dial. So, you know, I would kid people and say it's because it's on UFO. You have to be from another planet to get it. So nobody, and our poor account executives, you know, commercial people, you live, what pays your salary is the commercials. The Polydent, right off effort, that pays your salary. Now, how can you get your salary paid? I know I have to get to Central America. I will, I promise. So,
take your time.
No, so commercials. And our poor salesmen would go out, and salesmen would go out trying to sell the station. What? No, I never heard of that. It sounds like static. So, okay, the station signed on the air August of 1975. And nobody's watching this. It's September, October, November, December, January, February. And so, before the station goes on the air, this big box arrives with copper staples, and it said, Bill, that's for you. And it's a video camera. So I've never seen one before. And okay, Bill, you're going to be using that to do the news, and when the salesman can sell commercials, to shoot the commercials. So one camera to do both. That's already funny, right? So I found out that week that I was the first video news cameraman in San Francisco. Because at the time, if you remember watching the news was filmed okay, filmed on 16 millimeter film, which then had to be taken to the station, sent to the lab in the station at the lab. You know, they put it in the soup, as they call it, then edited it, then put it on the air, right? I'm the first video news cameraman in San Francisco, and I look a moon man because there's no rig set up for this. I have to go to a camping store and buy a backpack and cut holes in it. I am carrying the whole thing. I'm carrying 80 pounds of stuff on my back. I'm happy to do it. 135 pounds I weigh, but I'm carrying all this stuff. I'm glad to do it. It wasn't easy at first because San Francisco's a union town. Everybody was shooting film, and so the new kid on the block, the Latino kid on the block, the non-union kid on the block, I'd get a lot of this, elbows, you know, or shadows crossing the camera, you know, ruining my shot. Until one day, and this was when Mayor Moscone, the one who was assassinated by Dan White, it was, he had just been elected, it was at City Hall. And this is how bad of a news cameraman I was, I didn't know. Everybody's all lit for this whole thing, it's all pre-lit. But my dippy little camera is still dark. So I have this big photo flood thing and I turn it on. And I blew out everybody's shot, I didn't know this. And everybody's live on the air. And now I can see Mayor Moscone. Yeah, it looks good. And this hand comes and clicks it off, and it's a reporter from Channel 7 or something. You know, one of the big boys. And he says, if you turn that back on, I'll break your effing arm. Okay, so shooting the rest of this thing. I can't see Moscone. He looks like a smudge, but okay, I don't. And then my anchor man from Argentina, who I found out just recently was an illegal alien when he was on the air, which is funny. By the way, don't call it illegal alien. It's not nice. It's undocumented person. People are not illegal, and they're not aliens because they're human beings. So try to remember that. If you learn one thing today, it's not illegal aliens, it's undocumented persons. But anyway, and he went after the guy, and this fracas ensues, and live on the air. Okay, so that's San Francisco. So now, but nobody's really watching this, and so what happens? San Francisco is made up, especially when I was there, the Mission District and the Bay Area, of not only Mexicans and Mexican Americans, but a very large population of Central Americans. Guatemalans, Salvadorians, Nicaraguans, Hondurans, all fleeing from their country years before. And so in learning to do the news, remember I didn't study journalism, I was going to be Alfred Hitchcock. I had to find out for myself, what is news? What is news? What is news? You know? Because now I'm the news, now from reading the news, now I'm covering the news. That's a whole different animal. So anyway, San Francisco has a lot of Central Americans, and so Central America is a local story in San Francisco. That's local. What's news for you folks? You know, whatever hits in your stomach, right? And in your pocketbook usually, right? That's how you vote anyway. The news is very much the same. So, San Francisco, local story, Central America. On Wednesday, February 4th, 1976, an earthquake hits Guatemala, 23,000 dead. 3 o'clock in the morning, most people were sleeping. That's why they were killed in their sleep. That's a local story. So our news anchor, our news director, comes up with a brilliant idea. Tells the general manager and me and the reporter, who by the way was not a reporter, he was a cultural anthropologist from Peru who first saw his first TV program when he was 15, so it's kind of station it was. Now he's a reporter. So he convinces the general manager, you know what, why don't we send Bill and Guillermo to Guatemala to cover this earthquake and cover the earthquake. That way I'm going to cover the earthquake. And we'll have them back in time so that Sunday at 6 p.m. we can have a live telethon here in San Francisco. That'll put us on the map. Okay, so Wednesday, February 4th, we've got to be back Sunday the 8th, I believe that is, right? By 6 p.m. at the station. So of course we take off to San Francisco International Airport, and if we miss one flight, we can't make this telethon. Miss one flight. And so the hops are San Francisco to Los Angeles to Mexico City to Guatemala City. How are we going to do that? As soon as we get to San Francisco International, every flight is booked. Of course, people bringing clothes and food and medicines. Yeah, Guatemala, which is it's the country right below Mexico.
Right there.
We get to San Francisco, and well, it's full. I go, that's it, that didn't last long, you know. Guillermo talks to someone, he goes, Bill, come on, we bumped 2 people off the flight, we're going to Los Angeles. Whoa, okay, I don't want to know how you did it. We get to Los Angeles, same thing, from LA to Mexico City, every flight is booked. They have a lot of flights, every flight's booked. Gee, I'll take care of it, Bill. He did it, and he bumps 2 people off. Mexico City, same thing. Anyway, we wind up in Guatemala City. Finally, I think it's Thursday, late Thursday afternoon, Friday. And we don't, now, when you cover news, you have fixers at that location. Fixers are locals who know the area, and they get drivers for you. They handle everything for you. That's real network news. This is not network news. This is a dippy little Spanish TV station in San Francisco that nobody's watching. So we go down to Guatemala. We get to and Guatemala before, to me, meant National Geographic, all those beautiful vistas of volcanoes and the indigenous people with the colorful tapestries. And I said, oh wow, it's going to be pretty cool. I had no idea what I was in for. You know, I mean, I thought I was a tough guy from the South Bronx until I got to Guatemala. Because before then, those kinds of stories that I read about or saw in news, they were abstract. Those people weren't real, right? But once I got to Guatemala, these people were real. Their pain was real. And I grew up instantly. We get to the runway, it's all broken up, the terminal's demolished. We come down the stairs, and some woman who must have thought we were real newsmen came up to Guillermo and says, Julio Iglesias is right there. Now, it's 1974. I went to Woodstock. I don't know who Julio Iglesias is. Guillermo, cultural anthropologist from Peru, he doesn't know who Julio Iglesias is. Apparently he was famous already in 1974. So we're going like, who? It's right there. So we go over to him, we actually say to him, hi, what's your name? And what is it you do for a living? And he was there for a concert, which did not go on as scheduled. So that's how we got to Guatemala. Okay, now what? We have no fixer, no local, what? Guillermo was great. He got in touch with the Guatemala Red Cross, and they assigned someone to us with a Jeep who knew our time constraints, that we had to be back for this telethon. And all we did was just, okay, I'll take you to the worst hit places. Right? That's a really nice way of touring a new country. I'll take you to the worst hit places. And so the worst hit places, you know, as I said, 23,000 dead. I have a few facts here. The magnitude was 7.5, and there were thousands of aftershocks. 77,000 wounded, 260,000 houses destroyed, 1.2 million homeless, 40% of the hospitals were destroyed. Right? So I went to do that.
How did you handle that emotionally?
There's no, you know, at the time, I was a cameraman / producer, so I'm helping tell the story. What made it difficult was that, remember, I have this 10th telethon looming on Sunday. So all this footage that I shoot, I've got to shoot it in sequence. I've got to shoot it in the order in which I want to tell that story to you. Ordinarily, you just shoot it out of sequence, and then you get back and you put it together. I'm not going to be able to do that. So I shot the story as I saw it unfold and tried not to make any mistakes. I couldn't make any mistakes. I would rehearse the shot, okay, because I couldn't waste any tape. I couldn't waste any battery. There's no electricity. How am I going to recharge? Forget eating or any of that stuff. You know, or hotel. No, we slept in the car. We'd shoot until it was too dark to shoot, you know. So, yeah, I shot up, I mean, things I remember. We slept outside one night of a prison whose roof had collapsed, so it was full of dead prisoners. We slept out. That's pretty eerie. And it's true what they say. Every animal in God's kingdom, every fowl, everything, moments before an earthquake or a tremor, and I don't mean just like right before, I mean a while, they will all start screeching and howling, and so that's what would wake us up in the car. There were thousands of tremors, and no medical help. So you'd see people suffering, and what could you do for them? You know. So you asked me, how did I handle it? Because I'm looking through a lens and I'm seeing 4 lines. It has a way of distancing me from what's going on. Like I'm not really, like I'm watching it on TV. I still feel it because I'm there. I'm there. This other eye sees it. I can smell it. So you just do it. You just do it. And we did. And we made it back to the telephone. And got to the control room. And Guillermo went on the air. And I rewound the tapes. I had them marked. And then they patched me to the studio. And I rolled tape. And since I'm the only one who knew what was on that tape, and I knew when the shot was going to end, I'd tell the director, okay, stand by. I've got 2 seconds, 3, take it. And they'd go back to the studio. So that was seat of the pants, broadcast journalism, foreign correspondent, all in one. And it put the station on the map. It put the station on the map so that then we owned that story. Now we were expected to always, you know, but we didn't have that budget. As a, you know, because we got put on the map, we started selling commercials, and so the bill. Go shoot this taco commercial and go, what? There's like real news happening. We got to pay the bills. And they'd send me somewhere with some, you know, women making tortillas, and I'm going, wow, I went to school for this. But it puts things in perspective. Those are the people who were watching what we were reporting from Central America. So I'm sorry, did I take too long on that?
When did you go back to Guatemala?
Okay, so now I'm back in Guatemala. But this time, this is 6 years later, so I'm going to jump around a little bit. I've always wanted to work at CBS News. I grew up watching CBS News. You know, Walter Cronkite, America's most trusted man. So that was my bar. So when I went to Guatemala, that was my bar. You know, I said, I've got to do at least that. You know, go for that. And that was always my thing in San Francisco and for my career. So this time I'm at CBS News, March 23rd, 1982. I'm in El Salvador, which I'll get to later. I'm in El Salvador when New York calls, and you've got to rush to Guatemala. There's a military coup going on. Well, you know, that's like, there's a military coup going on in Central America. What time is it, right? So, we get a correspondent, Richard Wagner, and myself. We didn't even have a camera crew. I don't know why. I guess we thought we were going to pick one up in Guatemala City. So it's just 3 of us, the pilot, the correspondent, and myself. When it's just the 3 of us, I like to sit in the co-pilot seat because I'm not a good flyer, you know, especially in these tiny planes. This single engine, these tiny planes, and say, God is my co-pilot. There's no room for God to be a co-pilot in that plane. So I would sit in the co-pilot seat. And, you know, you take off. Remember, we're in volcanic, these big green volcanoes with mists. And you don't want to look down, because if you look down, you're done. You're done. She just looks straight. And you just like, it's a white knuckle, well, I'm brown, but, tan knuckle flying. And, I don't know, the pilot's not, what? And you know how you stare at a propeller sometimes and your eyes play a trick on you and it looks like it stops, the propeller? So I was doing that, except then it was stopping. And I said, no, it must be the altitude, no. And the pilot, I said, what's going on? And he says, well, we either have to go back or we gotta keep going. Well, no kidding. No kidding. Why? Because the alternator's not working and the battery's about to die. So it's your choice. What do you want to do? I look back, and Richard Wagner's asleep. Because he's like Vietnam, boring. No, so I go, well, turn back. We'll get another plane, right? If we make it. So we turn back. And we got another plane. So now I really don't want to go, right? Cool, who cares? News, what's the definition of news? It's information you're interested in. I'm not interested in it. So we got another plane, flew out. By the time we got there, the crew was long over. It was in reruns, right? But let me give you a couple of factoids on that coup. And so it's March 23rd, 82. Of course, a military general, Efraín Ríos Montt, who was in power for 18 months and then he himself was deposed. In his 18 months, he destroyed 600 villages, 3,000 dead or disappeared each month. Now, in Latin America, when you say disappeared, desaparecido, that is dead. Desaparecido in Latin America means that if you are considered a subversive, a subversivo, and a subversivo in Latin America is anyone who does not toe the line. You want to start a union? You're complaining about your wages? You're complaining about your suffering? You are subversive. You are a traitor. You are going to die. Okay? Doesn't take much to be called a subversive in Latin America. We were called subversives, and I'll get to that. So this man, 3,000 dead and disappeared each month for 18 months. And I'm ashamed to say that he considered himself a true Christian because one of his quotes is, a true Christian has a Bible in one hand and a machine gun in the other. Okay? He had this campaign called frijoles y fusiles. Frijoles are beans, and fusiles are weapons. It means, if you are with us, we feed you, frijoles. If you are against us, you die, fusiles. He had a scorched earth policy. He ran that place like a terror asylum. So the coup I went to cover that I missed put this man in power. And so then I had to deal with that. Central America is exploding. It's hot while the Cold War is still raging. Cuba has its people in Nicaragua. Cuba has its people all over Central America. So the Soviet presence, the United States is very unhappy about that. And they won't cotton to that. And they're going to do something about it. And they did. So that's the Guatemala coup. This man he had an apocalyptic vision. He really believed in the four riders of the apocalypse, and he renamed them for Guatemala. And he said for Guatemala, the four horsemen of the apocalypse were hunger, misery, ignorance, and subversion. Interesting, though, because these are the people that would keep the people hungry and miserable and ignorant. And then they're surprised when they would go to subversion. And that's why I was always there.
How did you end up heading towards El Salvador.
Okay, so before I go to El Salvador, if I could take a small detour, does anybody know what a banana republic is? What's a banana?
Government set up by, like, the United States, puts in someone who does everything for the economy of our country.
Close.
Takes away-
Anybody else?
The corporation center.
Okay, you're both right. A banana republic, and that's why I could never understand why any company would want to call itself Banana Republic. I mean, that's like calling yourself the Nazi, the Nazi Republic. We sell smart-looking clothes. Anyway, a banana republic is a small, impoverished nation whose economy is based on one or two cash crops, export products, like bananas, coffee, sugar. That's what Central America has an abundance of. They're run by an unholy trio of military, always the generals, governors, also the politicians, and the business class. And when I say the business class, the oligarchs, the people who are in bed, the people who own the infrastructure, who own the land, who are in bed with the generals and the politicians. So that, for instance, I couldn't believe it when I went to El Salvador, which ironically is misnamed because El Salvador means the Savior, as in our Lord Jesus Christ the Savior. And if any country should not be named El Salvador, it's El Salvador because of the misery that it suffered for so many years. But El Salvador, when I first got there, people told me, 12 families own this entire country. I mean, come on, 12 families. And it was true. 12 families own the entire country. Now, I was talking about fixtures before, the people that work for you your local hires. It's funny that in these banana republics, our fixtures were the sons and daughters of the oligarchs, of the people in power, of the people that the peasants were trying to depose. But why did we hire them? They all studied in American universities. They all spoke perfect English. They knew their country, and they had the right contacts in the government and the military. Of course they did. So if you wanted to do interviews, you needed their help. Otherwise, you were going to be left out in the cold. So to continue with banana republics, they're run by that unholy trio. Now, does anybody know who first coined the term banana republic? I knew I'd get you on that one. It was O. Henry. O. Henry, the American writer, was on the lam in Honduras. And in 1906, he wrote some short stories based on the horrors that he saw in Honduras. And he named that country a banana republic. Now, a banana republic. Why a banana republic? A man and his nephew, a railroad tycoon, were building a railroad in Costa Rica in the late 1860s. And as he was building the railroad, he's buying up the land on both sides of the railroad. To feed the workers, he grew bananas. Fed them bananas. He had so many bananas. In 1870, the first banana was brought to the United States. 1870. He made a killing. Chiquita banana ring a bell? Okay? That goes back to 1870. I'll fast forward a little bit. By the 1930s, this man and his nephew controlled 80 to 90% of the bananas in the United States. So by the 20th century, 3 American fruit companies owned all the land of Honduras, all of it. And not only that, they owned all the roads, all the railroads, all the ports, all the bridges, everything. So this is where you're saying, well, it's got to do with... in 1911, now, okay, the peasants go, whoa, wait a minute, because small amount of people owned everything, and then the rest of the population is left in perpetual serfdom. They control the wages, they control whether you work or not, they control whether you eat or not. So they keep you hungry and miserable, not knowing that one day those chickens will come home to roost. Okay. In 1911, the chickens start cackling. The Marines, the U.S. Marines occupied Nicaragua. The U.S. Marines occupied Nicaragua from 1912 to 1933. Right? Why? The U.S., France was interested in building a canal instead of Panama through Nicaragua. The U.S. was not going to have that. We're building a canal where we want, when we want, and we're going to own it. So they sent in the Marines so that nobody could build a canal through Nicaragua. Right? Sandinistas, where does that name come, Sandinistas? Because, of course, in that uprising, a peasant by the name of Augusto Nicolás Sandino fights the Marines. Okay? In 1934, he's caught and assassinated by a general, Anastasio Somoza. Some of you should know that name, because then the Somoza family kept in power for the next 40 years. So, okay, he assassinates Sandino in 34. In a military coup, he takes power in 36. And the family's not deposed until 79, when I'm back there with CBS News. That's what brings me back now, is for that. In 72, there was an earthquake. There are a lot of earthquakes in Central America because of its volcanic region. In 72, there was an earthquake in Nicaragua. I didn't cover that. 10,000 dead. International community sends relief and money to Nicaragua. Somoza pockets $400 million of it. Sure. He and his cronies pocket $400 million. To this day, there are parts of downtown Managua, the capital of Nicaragua, that are not rebuilt. So, the Frente Sandinista de Liberación Nacional, named after Sandino, the Sandinistas. Liberación Nacional means National Liberation Front. They finally deposed him in 1979, and in 1980, he's living in Paraguay. Some commando unit composed of Sandinista men and women, I don't know why I'm smiling, they blew his head off with a bazooka in Paraguay. I do have some stories about Nicaragua, so I'll just finish you're here to hear the stories. Okay, to hear the stories. So, to backtrack, that gives you an idea of who the Sandinistas are. When I'm working in San Francisco, the shoestring station, they send Guillermo and I, oh, what a good idea to send some local story. Let's send Guillermo and Bill to El Salvador. No, to the Nicaraguan Costa Rican border. They share a border. And let's send them out, and maybe they can find a Sandinista rebel training camp. How are we going to do that? We don't have any fixtures. This time we can land and get the Red Cross to help us. Julio Iglesias is not going to be there. Okay. Okay. No, I have the wrong country. That's Nicaragua. Costa Rica. So Costa Rica, I get confused. Costa Rica borders is the southern border of Nicaragua. So they send us. We get to this capital, we rent a Jeep, we drive up to the border, and then, we stand out, right? Because we look like who we are. Everybody else is small, and they look like, a third world movie. We look like we come from the States. We look well fed, we're well dressed, we have all this gear, how can you not tell, right? Small, dusty border town, people miserable. Okay, G, do your mojo. Find us some gorillas, boy. So we hung out. Because you're under surveillance. People are watching you. They're watching your every move. Where are you sleeping? Who are you talking to? What kind of questions are you asking? When you take out the camera, what are you shooting? What kind of questions are you asking? They don't trust us. We have to gain their trust. And so, I'll tell you, that's where I got this hat made. I said, I know how to gain their trust. I'll have them make me. You'll see Sandino. That's Sandino on that shirt. Augusto Sandino. You see the hat that he has. It's this hat. And this hat became a symbol of the Sandinista revolution. So it was not really smart of me to get this custom made for me. Well, I'm in the region, sure. Now what am I going to do? I have to take this hat to Guatemala, where that Rios Montt is in control. What? So I had to flatten it out and hide in my luggage. And when they found it, I told them it was a cotton canteen. Because somebody told me to hold water. They believed me. But anyway, I digress. That's why you have to keep me.
Okay.
Okay, so looking for the Sandinistas. So I think if I get this hat made, maybe we'll find the Sandinistas. Maybe they'll trust us. And sure enough, contact was made. And we were met. We were blindfolded, put in the back of a Jeep, driven to the base of a volcano, where we saw a ragtag group of impossibly young men and women, high school and college age, disciplined in military uniforms, with weapons and all, doing their trainings like you would think you were at West Point. And very few strictures. They said just don't point the camera towards the volcano because then you'll give it away. You know, each volcano has a certain look. So that was looking for the Sandinistas. And if you want my other Nicaragua story, it's very competitive, obviously. When you wake up in the morning in a hotel, all the press stays together. You know, you want to see the other press, members of the press. You want to see ABC and NBC and CNN in the dining room. And you gotta be okay. At least I know where they are. They're not beating me on a story. Yeah, okay, they're okay. Good. You don't want to show up and like there's no one there except you and your crew. You go, oh boy. The guerrilla sent a memo, I didn't get it. What am I going to do? Because now it's going to go on the air, they're going to beat me, and it's not like it's a secret, the whole world's going to know that you missed the story. So, in Nicaragua, now the Sandinistas had won, it's 79. What do? Everything's controlled. What do we do for news? Thank God the Soviets sent a freighter to Nicaragua. And there it was approaching Nicaragua. And the US got really upset. Saying that freighter's headed to Nicaragua. I wonder what it's carrying. It must be Soviet weapons to resupply the Sandinistas. We can't have that. So the U.S. Navy sent destroyers and battleships, and they got within 1,000 yards of the Soviet freighter. It's called the Ulyanov, and they trailed it. And they tried to stop it. They actually tried to stop it. It said, "Declare your name. What is your provenance? To where are you going? What is your cargo?" We don't have to, yet, we don't have to. So they trailed it, almost to the beach. It was like, oh God, is this going to be another Cuban Missile Crisis? And so, but how do you cover that story? Got a phone call at the bureau. I was in Managua running the bureau, and somebody says, they're selling footage that was taken aboard the Ulyanov. What? Wait. Bring it over. Oh no, you're under surveillance. So anyway, after a lot of Tom Clancy stuff, got to see the video. And indeed, it looked like it was a ship. It looked like the Ulyanov. I had seen photographs of it, so I see the Cyrillic name on it, and okay. So now it's time to call New York. New York, I've got this purported video of the Ulyanov. I didn't show any weapons, because the U.S. thought it had disassembled MiG jets and all kinds of ammunition. And so it's not my decision. That's New York. That's, the president of CBS News and Dan Rather and the vice president's lawyers get involved. So, okay, Bill, we'll get back to you. And okay, how much do they want? I'm not going to, can't tell you. It was a lot. So, okay, we purchased it. Now, when you feed a story out of Central America, back then, every capital has the equivalent of an AT&T building, the communications building, right? These are poor countries, so there's one building, that's where all the communications comes from. So, and that's where you would go with your edited video tape, and then you take your turn and you feed that via satellite to New York. In New York books satellite time. They go, okay, Bill, we're gonna book from 5 o'clock to 5:15. That's my window. That means that's the time that I have to feed my story to New York. And they'll say, feed it again, feed it again, feed it again. The color's off, feed it again, feed it again, feed it again. So they buy 15 minutes. So everybody gets to see everybody else's story that they're feeding. I get to see ABC, I get to see NBC, I get to see CNN. So I purposely showed them last, because I know what I've got. I got the Ulyanov, you know. And they've all got like, people making tortillas or something, boring stories, and life goes on type stories. And then I show it with the Ulyanov. Now, I felt good for a little while, but not really, because I didn't have anything to do with getting that story. And it was also the beginning of what they call checkbook journalism, where you just pay for the footage. And then it went rampant, and reality TV went nuts on it. You don't see it so much on network news, because they went crazy, and then you just have to be careful, because you're liable to cross the line there. Because how do you know that somebody didn't commit a crime to videotape something and then sell it to you? Oh, look, I've got the crime, you see. So,
Okay.
I think I'm done with Nicaragua.
And-
Although I'm not, but I'll have some Q&A. for
Yeah,
Nicaragua.
now
I want
you-
to talk about the Contras.
Okay,
Done.
or El Salvador.
El Salvador. Okay, so that's why I gave you my rap on banana republics, right? El Salvador is a banana republic. Why was I in El Salvador?
Yeah, what are you
Okay.
doing there?
Okay, all right. Let me get to El Salvador. Okay. El Salvador. Okay, so I told you about the history of El Salvador. Well, no, very quickly, second smallest country in Central America. It's about the size of Massachusetts. By the 20th century, their major cash crop is coffee. 95% of their economy is based on coffee. These are the 12 families that own all of that. In 1932, there was an uprising, up to 40,000 killed. It's called La Matanza, the massacre. What happens? There's always a peasant that takes the charge, and that was Farabundo Martí. And in 79, the guerrillas, I shouldn't call them guerrillas, well, they call themselves guerrillas. Be careful what you call people. You should call them what they call themselves, otherwise you're making a judgment. But they themselves call themselves guerrillas, los guerrilleros. They took over in 79, finally. That was a 12-year war. The UN reports 75,000 killed. That's why I was there. While I was there, in March 24th, 1980, the Archbishop of El Salvador, Archbishop Oscar Romero, was killed at the pulpit while he was celebrating Mass. I stood at the pulpit where he stood to try to see what was the last thing he saw. And what he would have seen was a small adobe village church, the back door opening, the sun coming in, masked gunmen coming with automatic weapons and spraying the altar. That's what he saw. So look at the impunity that these death squads, now you're talking about death squads, the same death squads that were running around in Guatemala, death squads were running around in El Salvador. Death squads were the ones that would tap on your door in the middle of the night if you had a kid who was old enough to be subversive or to pull a trigger, your child would disappear. So that's why I was sent down there. And also, in May of the same year, 1980, December of 1980, 3 American Maryknoll nuns and 1 lay worker had just arrived at the airport, were diverted by what turned out to be the Salvadoran National Guard, were raped and murdered and dumped into a pit. This is the El Salvador that I was working in. The danger that I encountered in El Salvador was everybody in news is competitive. Everybody wants to get on the air. All reporters want to get on the front page. Everybody wants to get the lead story. You got to fight for that. So the way network news works is it's a conference call on the national desk and there's one on the foreign desk, where New York talks to every single bureau, and you pitch your story. What's going on there today? What's going on? And then New York says, well, we're interested, we're not interested. Right? And so you always talk up your story, right? Because you want New York to say, yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that. So in El Salvador, there was so much bloodshed that people got inured to it. And so we would take foolish risks. We would go out for what they would call, I don't know where it came from, but they call it bang bang. Bang bang is exactly what it sounds like. Bang bang is when you come back with footage that shows fighting and death and injuries and people crying and death and destruction and devastation and fireballs and explosions. It's called bang bang. So New York would always say, Salvador, you got any bang bang? So, okay, let's go out and get some bang bang. Now you're taking your chances, because now you're going out without the help of your fixer. Now you're just driving aimlessly through the Catskills, let's say. Maybe I will encounter some bang bang. Maybe I will encounter some guerrillas fighting the Salvadoran soldiers, or maybe the soldiers will be fighting the guerrillas. You don't want to get caught in the middle, though. You see. Now, this shirt behind me that says, periodista no dispare, that's Spanish for journalist, don't shoot. In El Salvador, we would wear that, and we would take the white towels washcloths from the hotel bathroom, and then we would duct tape them to the car antenna of the van, and that would be our surrender flag. And then with duct tape, we would put on the van TV press in Spanish, TV prensa, right? Don't shoot us, we are the press. However, the Salvadoran army considered us subversives because we were speaking to the truth. They didn't want us talking about the Maryknoll nuns. How dare you say we were implicated in that? You are the problem, American press. We wore this one day, they took aim at us. We didn't wear that shirt ever again. They used that for target practice. What, are you crazy? It makes a cute souvenir now, but no, it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny, going for bang bang in El Salvador. One story, how you become used to it and you think nothing's going to happen to you. A Newsweek photographer tagged along with CBS. I wasn't in on that story. Tagged along with CBS News. They found some bang bang. John Hoagland was his name, a photojournalist, started just taking pictures and just like bullets are whizzing. He got hit. He caught one in the lung. And so it was very sad. He made the evening news that night. Yes, it did. It made everybody's evening news. Why? Because it happened to be an NBC crew at the same firefight. And so they videotaped the CBS News crew taking the body of John Hoagland and putting it into the CBS News van and taking it away. And that's because John took too many chances. John was looking through this. John felt like, I cannot be hurt. And what finally did it for me was Nicaragua. I'm still in El Salvador, it was Nicaragua. And I shouldn't forget this. Bill Stewart, ABC News correspondent, was in Managua, downtown, and his camera crew was in the car, and there was a checkpoint up the street. So he told the crew to stay in the car. He says, I'll just go see what's going on. He walks up, an American, he walks up to the checkpoint, 3 or 4 national, Salvadoran, this is Nicaragua, National Guardsmen. The cameraman had the good sense to videotape his correspondent walking to the checkpoint. And then you see this. You see this. You see the soldiers telling Bill Stewart to get down on the pavement. And he gets down like this, he's looking up, he's like, what's going on? You only see this, you don't hear anything. And then you see one of the National Guardsmen take out his weapon and point blank shoot Bill Stewart twice in the head. You see that. And his cameraman just lurches like this because he can't believe it. Well, that tape was secreted out of Nicaragua. At the time, Somoza was still in control. the National Guard, the death squads, your famous Contras type people. That's where they came from, were from these soldiers. That's why I laugh when they're called freedom fighters. That one shot, that video shot, did more to end that war than all the thousands who died in it. I mean, it's bittersweet because, yeah, it ended, but one American journalist dying, and everybody was disgusted, the world was horrified. But all those tens of thousands of people, they weren't horrified about. So,
So let me just say that we have,
10 minutes.
we've reached 8 o'clock, so we want to be able to give people
I haven't gone to
chance.
Grenada yet.
Right.
You want to go to Grenada?
Would people, it'll be.
Do you want to hear about Grenada?
Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah, and you'll.
Not Grenada, which is in Spain. It's Grenada.
Yeah, and Panama.
Let me get my Panama's a little.
You'll leave.
It's a
Yeah.
throwaway. It's a
Good,
throwaway.
throw.
Okay, Grenada.
The only war we won.
What's that?
It's the only war we won.
Okay. Wait till you hear this. Grenada. I'll tell the story first.
Yeah.
I'll tell the story first, and then I'll go to my factoids. I was at CBS News, and I was on the assignment desk. And you may, well, why were you on the assignment desk if you were a producer? Because it's like if you're from another country and you finished the 5th grade in that country, then you come to the States, they put you in the 4th grade. But I was just finished the 5th. So I was a producer at SIN News. I had covered Central America. I was all this stuff. Executive producer of the first national newscast in Spanish out of Washington. But I've always wanted to work at CBS News. So I get to CBS News, and they left me back they put me back in the 4th grade. So, oh, you're going to have to prove your mettle. You have to work on the assignment desk. The assignment desk is like air traffic control. Every network news room has an assignment desk. It's manned, womaned, 24 hours a day. It's where information comes in. It's where, back in my day, it was teletype machines with the bells going off, going urgent, urgent, urgent. It was AP, Reuters, and UPI. Now it's computers, I'm sure. But that was the old newsroom. So they put me in the newsroom, and my shift that night was the graveyard shift. It was midnight to 8. In a sense, I am CBS News. From midnight to 8, I am CBS News. Domestic. Anything that happens in the United States of America goes through me. Either through the wires or phone calls, it goes through me. It's a scary job. I don't decide what's the news, but you have to have a nose for news so that you know, okay, when do I start mobilizing troops? So I'm doing the midnight to 8. Now, the week before, CBS News had done a story, Dan Rather had done a story out of Grenada about a medical school in Grenada. St. George's Medical School, where 100 American students. It's a medical school where they had one cadaver. One cadaver. Are you done with that arm? Because I kind of need it. One cadaver, all right? So CBS News had done a story about Grenada and this medical school, and there was a ham radio operator from New Jersey in the story. I remember that. Why do I remember that? Because it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and this ham radio operator calls up the assignment desk. And I remember him, and he's going, and I think he's got the TV on, he's watching a war movie. It's the invasion of Grenada has just started, and he's there. He's talking to the medical students, and so he's going, it's happening, the invasion's happening. I'm going, whoa, what? It's happening. Listen, hang on a second. And I hear the medical students. I'm going, whoa. And I'm checking UPI and Reuters and AP. Nothing. The bells aren't ringing. I'm going, no. I know this war story that nobody else knows. So I get up in the middle of the newsroom. I go, everybody. Now everybody knows that I'm a wise guy. So everybody, the war, the invasion of Grenada started. Oh, shut up, Bill. No, seriously, the war. I'm talking to the guy from. All right. So there are protocols for something like that. And you don't take them lightly. You have to wake up the president of CBS News. Whoa, you better be right? You have to wake up Dan Rather. And you have to wake up a boatload of vice presidents and all. It's all the way down. It's chain of command. It's very military. News is very military. So I go, do I dare? I mean, what am I wrong? Nah. So I did. Well, they're all going, yeah, right, Bill. I'm lining up all my ducks. Yeah, it's happening. Dan, yeah, it's Bill. It's happening. Okay. So everybody's comes in with, and then of course the bells go off. Ding, 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 ding. And now they believe me. But now I've got to jump on all of them. Because now people are coming in. Dan Rather's coming in with, wet hair. Everybody's coming in with wet hair. Everybody just took a shower and has got toilet paper on their face. And so everybody comes in and go, wow, this is news. This is news. So 8 o'clock, my shift's over. I don't want to leave. And so the foreign editor, who I don't work for, I work for the national desk. I worked in Central America, so they would borrow me for 3-4 months at a time because of my experience from working in San Francisco at that small station and all that, and I'm bilingual and all that. I knew the story. So whenever it would get hot in Central America, CBS News would ask my national editor, can we borrow Bill for 3 or 4 months? Okay, take off. So at 8 o'clock comes the foreign editor, hey Bill, have you got a passport? Psst, yeah. Can you be on a plane inside of 2 hours? Yep. Wow. You have to ask him though. Go ahead, Bill, go ahead. I can't be too enthusiastic because I work for you, not for. But yeah, and then I was on a flight to Miami to Barbados. Now, keep in mind that 2 days before, in Beirut, the Marine barracks had just been blown up. And America lost 240 some odd military personnel. Yeah, 241. Grenada, I'm talking about Grenada? Is that what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I forgot.
We're in Grenada.
Oh, we're in Grenada. Okay, because I'm flying around.
But you're
When we got down there, the reason I mentioned that is, I have to go to my facts. It was called Operation Urgent Fury. Urgent Fury. The island is the size of Martha's Vineyard. 91,000 people. Okay? 400 miles north of Venezuela. Its nickname is the Island of Nutmeg, I think, or Island of Spice. Nutmeg. It gained its independence from the UK in 74. There was a leftist coup in 79. They were building a runway, a long runway that could possibly land MiG fighter jets, Soviet ones. Mr. President was not going to have that. What's going on in Nicaragua and here, the Caribbean basins being, influenced by the Soviets. We can't have that. And plus those poor American medical students who were never in harm's way, by the way. They thought it was funny. It wasn't funny. It wasn't funny because lives were lost. Look at what an invasion was. 8,000 soldiers. 19 U.S. dead, 25 Cuban dead. When I got there, now this was the first really media-managed war. Who ran this war? These were Vietnam vets who are now lieutenant colonels. Okay, they had now these weapons that they did not have in Vietnam. These were high-tech Star Wars, computer game weapons. They were itching to use. So it was the first high-tech invasion in that sense. I say media managed because the only way to get to Grenada was the military took you in a C-130 from Barbados. Everything was, they told you when to talk, what to shoot, when to shoot. They micromanaged anything. It was hard to tell that story. Yeah, we'd hear random gunshots in the hills because the Cuban soldiers were in the hills shooting. Remember I told you about that hospital in Guatemala that was crushed? My second hospital. The U.S. military accidentally bombed this hospital for the criminally insane. And not funny, but 18 survived, and I think that we hired one of them as a local hire, because we didn't have any local hires there. But this is true. There was such a lack of intelligence that the US military used car rental maps and tourist maps for the invasion. Can you imagine that? Calling artillery on Hertz rental car maps. The date of the invasion is now known as Thanksgiving Day. But why do I bring that up? Because that was the second time Bill almost died in a fixed-wing plane. I was working at the time with Liz Trotta, who, if those of you who've watched news for many years, TV news, Liz Trotta was the first woman to report from Vietnam. And she knew a lot of these, because of that, she knew a lot of these lieutenant colonels and people running the war. She could schmooze them. Hey, can you get me a helicopter? Get me in a helicopter, that kind of stuff. So she did one of these things. She jumped, can you get me in a helicopter? There's no room for you, Bill. We didn't see eye to eye too much. Didn't care for her too much, and you'll see why. She shoots all this stuff. Bill, I got a great story, but I haven't seen it. I don't know what you have in your hand. We've got to, now by this time the military had stopped flying us from Barbados to Grenada. Now you were on your own. Now you wanted to get to Barbados, you had to do it on your own. Very expensive story to do. So what did we do? CBS News, we hired a helicopter that stayed in the parking lot of the hotel the whole time at my disposal, that would fly us to the north end of the island. By the way, the island is 12 miles wide by 21 miles long. Where we had a fixed-wing plane ready to take us across open sea to Barbados. Why? The feed point, where you put your cassette to feed the satellite. There wasn't one in Grenada. Go to Barbados. So now you shoot a story, helicopter up to your plane, fly across open sea to Barbados, have a fixer pick you up, run you to the telephone company, feed that thing to New York. Okay, Liz Trotta has a story, can't wait, it's got to get on the air tonight. Get on the chopper, go to the airstrip where the pilot is putting gas in the plane. And Liz Trotta says, "What are you doing? We have got no time for that." I said, "Liz, yeah, we do. We do. No, we don't. We got to make air." She intimidated the pilot so much, he capped the wing. He stopped filling the plane. Take off. I'm the co-pilot. I'm not going to sit next to that thing. Think of Mommy Dearest. That's Correspondent Dearest. I hate when the pilot gets those knuckles and he's looking at his charts and going, what? You see that up ahead? All I see is black. Exactly. What? We have to fly around that. And we don't have enough gas. None of this turning back and starting getting another plane this time. Open water. Needless to say, we made it, obviously, to Barbados on E. On E. I have nothing to say to this woman. She storms off in a huff. She's mad at me. I made her late. Our fixer picks us up. Oh, she's on the phone. She's already on the payphone as soon as we get to the airport in Barbados. Calling New York. Calling the executive producer. No doubt complaining about Bill. Gas. So, she's telling him on the story. We rush and we feed it to New York. New York doesn't want a story from her. They just want the video, the pretty video of, oh, look how pretty this looks. So we rush back for nothing. So I almost died for nothing. What, you want me to do the Panama Canal? I got all night. I mean, have you got to be anywhere? Are your DVRs recording? Marianne, 9 o'clock, PBS.
Let's go for questions.
You want Panama?
Yeah.
Panama, I won't go into the history of it.
Okay, no questions for you.
No. Okay, Panama. So here, Panama, September 7th, 1977. Back at the shoestring place, San Francisco. The Panama Canal, which was not built in Nicaragua, the Panama Canal was started in 1903 and they finished it. It opened in August of 1914. And since 1903, the Panamanians have kind of wanted a better deal than they actually got. Like they wanted to keep it before they lost it. We kept it till 77. The US kept it to 77. So anyway, they sent Guillermo, hey Bill, Guillermo, why don't you go down to Panama? Congress is going to vote on the canal and see if we return it or not. Panama. No military coup, that's not bad. No guerrillas, that's not bad. The canal zone, I don't even know this, it's a tax-free, duty-free. You go to the canal zone, you can buy all your Japanese products you want and come back here, not pay a thing. But you gotta go to Panama. That's the Panama Canal Zone. And it's called the Canal Zone because it really, literally was a part of the United States, kind of a part of the United States. The Canal Zone was the US. But in 77, they want it back. Gosh darn it. And so they send Guillermo and I down there. We interviewed the president, Omar Torrijos, former general, of course. And he tells us, well, Congress doesn't vote to give it back to us. I'll just blow it up. I'll just blow it up. You have to go back around Tierra del Fuego like the old days. Congress voted for it to return to Panama. So the day of the vote in Washington, Guillermo and I are there. The vote goes through. President Torrijos announces free booze for everybody. And I swear there were trucks everywhere, all over the Capitol, handing out bottles of rum to each citizen. Here you go, here you go, here you go. The whole place got trashed that night. Easy story to do. Even I did, I think, too. If you're watching this, Mom, I didn't. Okay, questions?
Yes.
Otherwise, I start teaching and start talking about Contras and stuff.
Were you in Panama for the invasion?
No. Good point. And then what year was it? And then, very good, because then, December of '89, Bush sends in the troops to remove Noriega, who was originally our guy. But what makes me laugh, they finally got him out with blasting heavy metal music at him through all hours of the night, instead of salsa.
Didn't our troops kill about 4,000 Panamanians?
I'm not a historian. I'm only here to talk about witness to history. I didn't witness that, so I don't know.
There was a film that was done that was here in Rhinebeck, as a matter of fact, depicting that episode. I just wondered if you knew anything about that.
No, that was the one time I was in Panama. That was the one time I was in Panama. After that, really, after Bill Stewart's assassination by the National Guard in Nicaragua, you'd think would have hit home before. I said, now they're shooting, now they're killing us. No impunity. Now they're treating us like no, we're going to be the desaparecidos. I said, I don't mind covering the news, but I don't want to make the news. And my family and friends at home would worry because it's not like now where you have satellite phones and cell phones and social media. When I was gone, I was gone. The only way you knew I was alive was if you put on CBS News or something and you said, oh wow, there's a report from Central America. Yeah, I hope it's Bill's. It doesn't number on the people here. On us, yeah, it's true. There are no atheists in a foxhole. Yeah, been situations where, God, get me out of this. I promise. That I will be so good. I'll make Mother Teresa look like a demon. And you do it for a while.
I was going to ask about the political situation in our country. I think Reagan was in during that period of time.
Well, Carter and Reagan were both complicit in some of those countries. They're the ones that trained the Contras, supplied them with weapons, supplied them with intelligence, I'm not kidding you that the Contras were composed of elements that made up the death squads and the National Guard. These were bad guys. There was one, I can only tell you part of the story. I was working at CBS News, and Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes had done a piece that had upset the Contras. He had been embedded with them, he came back to New York, and done a piece that really upset them. Why? Because he told the truth. These were nothing but thugs. They were death squads that were coming in from the border and attacking border villages in Nicaragua and then running back across the border. They were terrorists. Reagan called them freedom fighters. I'm not allowed to say. I'm there covering the story. I know what I see. But unless it's confirmed or some pointy head tells me, I can't put that in my story. You know? I know what I saw, I know what I witnessed. So CBS News, Mike Wallace does this story, upsets the Contras. The Contras send out this edict. CBS News cannot come with us on any of our forays. No more interviews. We're shutting them out. We're shutting them out. We're not talking to CBS News. Now, this is during Iran-Contra. That's a big story. So the Contras are in the news every single day. You watch CBS News, and you watch Dan Rather, and it says file footage, file footage. Every time they show a Contra, it's the same one tying his bootlaces. If he were in the union, if he were in Screen Actors Guild, he'd make money. Every appearance. NBC, new footage, they're embedded with the Contras. ABC, CNN, everybody's embedded with the Contras, but CBS News. One day they call me down to what they call the fishbowl. The fishbowl at CBS News is a glassed enclosure on the set of the newscast. So it looks like a fishbowl, so they call it the fishbowl. That's where the brains of that newscast are. Pretty much of the news division are right there. That's where the executive producer, that's where the big boys and women sit, right there. Those are the grown-ups. They call me down to the fishbowl. When they call you down to the fishbowl, you don't want to go down to the fishbowl. You think you did something wrong. Oh, God, what did I do? Went down there, and it's the executive producer wants to talk to me. And he's closing the door and asking people to leave. This is getting scary. What's up? Well, Bill, you know that the Contras have shut out CBS News. Yeah, I know. See the same soldier tying his boot every day. I'm going to make you this proposition. Consider this, Bill. What would you think about going down to Miami? We're in touch with a former Green Beret who's friends with the Contras. He's a cameraman too. He's a freelance cameraman, news cameraman. We're thinking of hiring him. How about you meet him in Miami, and both of you fly down to Honduras, and both of you drive down to the Nicaraguan border, where you will be embedded with the Contras for 3 or 4 months. However, you can never tell them that you're from CBS News. You cannot take your CBS News identification. You have to be, quote unquote, freelancer. Will you do it? You learn in network news right away. You never turn down an assignment. Because if you do, you'll never be asked again. And your trajectory will end right there. So even if you don't want to do it as a suicide mission, you always eagerly say, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to do that. I'd love to go on a suicide mission where I'm sure I'm going to be killed or step on landmines or be shot by the Sandinistas. I'd love to do it. What better way of spending 3 or 4 months? So I said, yes. When I walked out, a senior producer of CBS News called me over and he said, Bill, you can't do that. I go, I already said yes to the executive producer. He said, you can't do it. I went, why? He said, it's unethical. I said, why would it be unethical? He said, Bill, God forbid you get hurt down there or you get killed down there. Are you a CBS News employee then? The world's going to find out anyway. Don't do it. don't do it. And so, I did not do it, but for another reason. Any other questions? Robert Stone, thank you for coming. Come on down.
Was that your last gig at CBS News? I mean, did they?
You know, it was. That was very prescient of you, because at the time, the refrigerator makers, as I call them, had started buying up the networks. GE bought NBC, and the first thing they did was decimate the network news. News never makes money. News loses money. News used to be a matter of pride for the network. When CBS News was known as the Tiffany Network, when Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America, that's when news, broadcasters, TV news was at its height, you know? But when the refrigerator makers bought the networks in the mid-80s, starting with GE and NBC, Tisch bought CBS. The first thing he did was sell CBS records. These people would buy the companies and cannibalize them. And wouldn't you know it, okay, now I'll finish the story. So on Friday, March 7th of 1987, I'm in LaGuardia Airport flying down to Miami to meet this Green Beret cameraman to go get embedded with the Contras, these famous freedom fighters. And when I get to LaGuardia, my flight's canceled. The weather's not bad, flight's canceled. In fact, not only was the flight canceled, they said, you have to go to Kennedy to get your flight. I've never heard of such a thing. So I go to, so I call, when news, you always call. You always call your desk, anything changes. Not flying out of LaGuardia, going to Kennedy, okay. And you write it down. They keep a log. Kennedy Airport, my flight's delayed. My flight's delayed. I hear people crying at CBS News in the New York Bureau. I hear people weeping. What's going on over there? Oh, Bill, it's a good thing you're not here. They're firing people left and right. People who've been here for decades, famous people. Good thing you're not here. Whoa, good thing I'm not there. Good thing I'm going off on a suicide mission instead, right? So the flight's delayed again. I call the desk. This time, it's a funny answer. My buddy answers. He's the assistant bureau chief. And I could tell this funky way he answered. He gives me to the bureau chief immediately. And I said, boy, what's going on? He said, where are you? I said, at Kennedy, I'm waiting for the flight to Miami. And he said, come on back. Why? I don't work there anymore, do I? He said, no, you don't.
Wow.
I said, what did I do? He said, you didn't do anything. Come on back. And so then I, in a haze, because now it's rush hour, I had to get my baggage out of the belly of the plane, which was a drag, then sit in rush hour traffic wondering, you know, rewinding the tape of my career, going, after all I've done, after all I've risked, why? And it turned out they just didn't care about the news anymore. And they wound up replacing me with 3 kids who weren't bilingual. In fact, they didn't care about the story anymore. When was the last time you saw anything coming out of South or Central America? Thank you, Robert. Yes?
During your,
I'm looking at this woman who's been asking me questions since...
I just want to know, what does Pope Buster mean?
Oh, since we have a sense of humor in the news, I covered the Pope when he went to Ecuador. So the 3 networks got together and they made up this T-shirt that said Pope Busters Network God Squad. We have a very gallows sense of humor. We go and see, we go through a lot, see a lot. One time, Tom Brokaw, before he was an anchor, was covering a story and he said, you might want to move your foot. You're stepping all over gorilla brains. So you have to laugh at stories like that.
I thought it had something to do with the Pope. I forget which Pope.
No, this is the Pope of the People, John Paul. What was his name? John Paul? I forget.
What Pope was it that went to Nicaragua and was treated so badly by the Sandinistas?
John Paul.
Was it John Paul?
Well, see, there's a thing called liberation theology. Now,
Yeah.
liberation theology in Central America meant if the church sympathized with the peasants, which of course you have, the church is composed of the peasants. But if the church gives refuge or sanction to the peasants, they're considered subversive. That's why they killed the Archbishop of El Salvador. He was preaching liberation theology, which meant drop your arms, stop this already. You've got more than you need. Let them eat. Talk like that is considered subversive. But you can't say this in mixed company in certain places in Central America. Because you're marked, you're subversive, you're one of them. And then as an abstract, you're inhuman. It's easier to kill you as an abstract. Let me give somebody back there a chance. Who is that? You.
Yes, so when you talked about how you would put together a story when you're in some place they call Salvador, Guatemala, and then that would get pushed up the satellite link and the producers get it. Did you ever look at what they finally put on the air compared to
No,
what
because
you
you don't
said?
get back for 4 months. And the last thing you want to see is that when you get back to New York. It takes you a while to adjust. It took me a while to adjust because people weren't wearing baskets on their heads, for instance, and carrying firewood from a strap with their forehead, you know? And I would think, oh, how odd. It changes you. It changes you. You never look at news the same again when you cover the news. Walter Cronkite said, in order to have an informed electorate, you need to read several newspapers, watch several television news programs. You need to read several news magazines. You need to talk to your friends and neighbors. You need to go to the public forum before you can make an educated decision. Americans don't do that. Americans watch one thing, read one thing, hear one thing. I know it all. You do not know it all. We do not know it all. And it's because we've had this attitude that I spent so many years in Central America, because of our know-it-all attitude, which created banana republics. It creates the suffering that then we act all surprised and go, what? They're unhappy? They want to revolt? Name a place we haven't done it. We've done it. The template started in Honduras, as I said, with Banana Republic and goes all the way down to the tip of South America. Iran. Yeah, he's a dictator, but he's our dictator. He's our dictator. We can control him.
Talking about dictators, you have been many times in Nicaragua. Have you ever had a chance to meet Somoza in person?
No. He would stay in a bunker, and it was actually called the bunker. He lived under the ground, so if you bombed, mind you, he's the only man I know who ever bombed his own city, except for Assad, right?
My husband met him.
You did?
Yeah.
No. Although I met the president of El Salvador, Duarte, and Duarte, the death squads had gotten to him, and he was missing these fingers. They just took a machete to him. And so the president of El Salvador, right, it was like this. This is how these people do business. Yes, ma'am.
So,
One more question? Ooh.
so could I, are you able to address how you feel now when you see like the Central American kids coming here and how they're treated?
It's awful because
that no one has the history that you know. You know what I mean?
that's another horror tale because they grew up with so much violence.
Right.
And they were traumatized by that. They're up here, and they formed really bloody violent gangs, and they control prisons, and they control whole communities. Salvatrucha is one of them. Salvatrucha. And they're all, you know, they come up, well, they come up from Salvador to Guatemala, then to Mexico, and then they just cross the border.
Because now Honduras is the most.
Honduras has a lot of bad boys coming up, and they're like 13. They're hired guns already at 13.
It sounds like this has stirred up a lot of memories and ideas and thoughts, and we want to thank you, Bill.
No, thank you. I'm shocked.